Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm going to talk to you today about the Battle of Midway in World War II. Okay, World War II was the first war that America freed Korea from oppression, from Imperial Japanese oppression, and the Battle of Midway was the naval turning point of World War II. Before, Japan was winning naval battle after naval battle. Now, the turning point for land battles was the Battle of Guadalcanal. Now, Guadalcanal is a different video. And Guadalcanal, the U.S. Marines as well as the U.S. Navy did amazing things in Guadalcanal, but we'll focus on Midway for this video, okay? All right, in the Battle of Midway, there was this battle for Midway Island, okay? If Japan, the U.S. controlled Midway Island, but if Japan took control of that, two things would have happened. The U.S. it was close enough to Hawaii that the U.S. would have seen that as a threat, but it was far enough from Hawaii that the land-based aircraft in Hawaii could not effectively bomb Midway if Midway was in Japanese hands. So the Japanese Admiral Yamamoto, he planned on bringing the U.S. carriers to Midway and finishing off and destroying the U.S. carriers. Now, that did not happen. The U.S. carriers sank all four Japanese carriers, and Japan had four carriers: the Kagi, the Kaga, the Soryu, and the Hiryu. The U.S. had three carriers: Lexington, Yorktown, and Enterprise. Okay. And before the Battle of Midway, the USS Enterprise, they escorted the USS Hornet. Okay, the USS Hornet was escorted in to do the Doolittle raid. The B-25 bombers were launched off the USS Hornet to bomb Japan, and it was small damage delivered to Japan, but it delivered severe psychological damage on Japan. It showed Japan that they were vulnerable, that their mainland could be attacked. So the USS Enterprise escorted the USS Hornet. The bombers were launched off the Hornet, but the USS Enterprise escorted the USS Hornet. Okay. We talk about the Battle of Midway. Okay, Japan, as I said, had four aircraft carriers. Japan also had 248 carrier aircraft. They had 248 carrier aircraft, and then they also had 15 submarines, and then they also had 7 battleships and 150 support ships. Now, the United States had 3 carriers. They had 50 support ships. They had 233 aircraft and 233 carrier aircraft, and then 127 aircraft on land airfields at Midway Island. And then they also had 8 submarines, okay? The United States Navy, the commander was Chester Nimitz. Originally, the commander of the U.S. Navy for this battle was supposed to be Bull Halsey, but Bull Halsey came down with a severe case of psoriasis. It was a severe skin infection that he had to be hospitalized for it. He had to go to the hospital for psoriasis. So Chester Nimitz took control of the U.S. Navy at Midway. Okay, Chester Nimitz was a native of the state of Texas. He has spent 40 years in the United States Navy. So he was a 40-year Navy veteran, and he was very tough, very strong. And even though the Americans were outnumbered, they broke the Japanese code. They found a Japanese coded message, and the coded message said AF. Now, originally, the U.S. sailors believed AF stood for the Aleutian Islands in Alaska. They thought Japan was going to attack the Aleutian Islands in Alaska, but Nimitz said no. Nimitz said that Japan was looking for an area in the Pacific, not the Aleutian Islands. So he believed the AF stood for Midway, and he was right. So God bless Chester Nimitz for that paying off. Because had he guessed the Aleutians, that could have been the difference in World War II. And I couldn't have this job in Korea. So, okay, Chester Nimitz did that. Okay, originally, the Enterprise launched 2 torpedo bomber squadrons. They were the squadrons consisted of the TBD Devastator planes, and the planes were not ideal for attacking Japanese ships and Japanese carriers because the torpedo bombers were very, very slow. They were very slow, and they did not destroy any of the Japanese ships. Japan destroyed 25 of the torpedo aircraft. One pilot survived. His name was Ensign George Gay. There were 2 people to each plane. And Ensign George Gay was the only person, pilot or gunner, there was a pilot and a gunner on the plane, that survived. So, also, okay, all right, sorry, I got a little bit distracted there. Okay. Then after the torpedo bomber squadrons, the U.S. had a dive bomber squadron, okay? And the dive bomber squadron, one of the pilots there was named Dusty Cleese. And Dusty said before they got to the dive bombers, the U.S. fed them steak and eggs. And they knew they were in for a dangerous mission, because anytime you were fed steak and eggs, it was a very good meal like that, it means you were about to go on a dangerous mission. So they knew something was dangerous was about to happen, because they were being fed steak and eggs. Dusty Cleese was a pilot from Coffeyville, Kansas, and he helped sink one of Japan's aircraft carriers. He made a courageous dive on a Japanese aircraft carrier, and he helped sink the carrier. So God bless Dusty Cleese. He lost his best friend. His best friend was a torpedo bomber pilot, and he lost his best friend in this battle. So this victory was very special for Dusty Cleese. So God bless Dusty Cleese. Okay. All right. How the U.S. dive bombers found the Japanese carriers is a very interesting story. The Japanese destroyer, the Arashi, was playing cat and mouse game with the U.S. submarine, the USS Nautilus. So it was chasing USS Nautilus, eventually gave up chasing the Nautilus, and went back to join the carrier fleet. Well, Wade McCluskey was the leader of the dive bomber group. He was 40 years old. He was from Buffalo, New York. He was originally a fighter pilot, but so mostly he flew fighters and not bombers, but in this case he flew bombers, and he was flying this bomber at 190 knots. Normally you fly a bomber at 160 knots, but he was flying that bomber at 190 knots, and when you fly that fast, you run low on fuel. But Wade McCluskey decides to say, we're not going back to the carrier to refuel, we're going to follow this destroyer. We're going to follow this destroyer. Maybe he'll lead us to Japanese carriers. And the destroyer did. And the Dauntless dive bombers destroyed 3 Japanese aircraft carriers at that time. 3. The bombers from the Yorktown destroyed the Soryu. Now the Akagi and the Kaga were destroyed by the bombers from the USS Enterprise. Okay, now the Japanese planes from the Hiryu, they take off, they get through to the United States ship, the USS Yorktown, and they sink the USS Yorktown. Not at first. The Val dive bombers deliver heavy damage, but the U.S. patches up the damage very quickly. But then the torpedo bombers, Japanese torpedo bombers, come in and they finish off the USS Yorktown. But eventually, American planes get to the Hiryu and they sink the Hiryu. So Japan loses 4 aircraft carriers. They lose 4 aircraft carriers. They also lose 3,000 experienced pilots. So the main thing that hurt Japan there was losing all their experienced pilots, or most of their experienced pilots. And Japan never won a major engagement after the Battle of Midway. No, they never won a major battle. Now, some people could count the Battle of Savo Island, where they defeated the U.S. Navy, but that was more like a battle within the battle because it was part of the Battle of Guadalcanal. Overall, it was. So technically, Japan never won a major engagement. If you want to count the Battle of Savo Island, you could, but it's technically a battle within a battle. This is part of the Battle of Guadalcanal. So, hope everybody's doing well, and God bless the U.S. Navy at Midway. God bless Dusty Cleese. Also, God bless Bruno Gaido. Bruno Gaido was a gunner for dive bomber. He participated in this battle as well. Him and his pilot were shot down, and they were taken prisoner aboard a Japanese ship, and the Japanese basically, they killed them. They were not happy with their carriers being destroyed, so what they did was they tied blocks, big heavy blocks around their ankles, and they threw them into the sea. Just inhumane, cruel treatment. And Bruno Gaido was a hero because right after Pearl Harbor, the United States staged a few raids near the Marshall Islands, the USS Enterprise. Well, some Japanese Betty bombers were trying to bomb the USS Enterprise. They're trying to destroy it. The Enterprise repels most of the bombers, but one of the bombers was damaged, so it circled around and tried to crash in the USS Enterprise. But Bruno Gaido got into a gun, and this was on a plane that was on the carrier, not a plane that was flying. And he got into the gun and he shot the bomber, the Betty bomber, and the Betty bomber clipped and cut the plane that Bruno Gaido was in. But Bruno Gaido killed that Betty bomber. And had the Enterprise been lost that early in the war, that could have been the difference in World War II. So I owe a lot to Bruno Gaido. So it makes me sad hearing about the way he died. Look, I've been in Japan many times. I have a fun time when I go there. That was then, this is now, but we need to remember the sacrifice that these U.S. sailors made. And the U.S. Marines and U.S. Army in the Pacific Theater. Okay, I have a good time when I go to Japan. I don't have any problems when I go to Japan. Times have changed. But we need to remember what has happened in World War II. So, hope everybody's doing well, and take care, and God bless. And God bless the U.S. sailors at Midway that helped turn the tide of the Pacific Theater. So, hope everybody's doing well. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. That helped turn the tide of the Pacific Theater of World War II. So, take care. God bless. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.